Hey everyone, I'm Jelster, and this is my speedrun of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time No Wrong Warp in 43 minutes and 21 seconds. You may have already seen the any percent category for this game, which just beats the game without any restrictions, and if you haven't seen that, I'll leave a link in the description to a good commentated run of that. Basically, if you don't know, in any percent we use a wrong warp that warps Link from the Deku Tree all the way to the final part of the game. And then you can defeat Ganon as Child Link and beat the game in under 18 minutes. In No Wrong Warp, that glitch is banned, so what's the fastest way to beat the game here? Well, here's the basic requirements. After going adult for the first time, you can go to the Ganon's castle area right away. And you see that loading zone over there? You're supposed to only be able to get over there when the sages build you the rainbow bridge at the end of the game. But using glitches, it's actually possible to enter that loading zone, get past the trials, beat all the mini-bosses, and even beat Ganon using only a sword, a shield, and bombs. The only problem here is the Ganondorf fight. And the reason it's a problem is that you need to shoot a light arrow at him in order to stun him. And shooting a light arrow actually has a lot of ingredients. You need the item light arrows itself, you need an arrow, you need a quiver to hold that arrow, and you need magic to charge the arrow. Now, getting all these items in the places you're supposed to get them is a bit of a pain in the ass. To get magic, you need to play Zelda's Lullaby in the Fairy Fountain on top of Death Mountain. And to get Zelda's Lullaby, you need to get past these guards that always fuck over your runs. And after that, you gotta sit through the entirety of Zelda's Dream. It takes forever. To get a quiver and arrows, you have to go pretty deep into the Forest Temple to open the chest with the bow. And to get the light arrows themselves, you need to beat the Shadow Temple and the Spirit Temple. And having those two medallions triggers the light arrow cutscene in the temple a time. And then you have to sit through the entirety of that cutscene. Now, there is actually a category that does all of this. It's called No Item Manipulation, No Wrong Warp, or No I Am Wrong Warp for short. And currently the record for that is 1:15:59. However, if we allow item manipulation, we can do better. And using different methods of item manipulation to get all the items we need is what this run is all about. If you just watch it without any commentary, it can be hard to follow and frankly kind of boring, because some of the glitches I do seem totally random and pointless, and every item I need just seems to appear out of thin air, but I promise there's logic behind it, and I'm gonna explain it all to you. This is probably a good time to mention that I'm playing on the Japanese Wii Virtual Console version. The reason I use Japanese is that the text scrolls much faster than English. I put the English version on the left side here for comparison, and you can see that just over the course of a few text boxes, the Japanese version saves a couple seconds, and that adds up to minutes over the course of a full run. So it's pretty important that I use the Japanese version if I want to get an optimized time. Using Wii Virtual Console is also pretty important for this route, but I'll get into that in a few minutes. Okay, so walking around normally is actually really slow in this game, so you'll almost always see me either backwalking, rolling, or side hopping. Here's the exact movement speeds for all those, and as you can see, side hopping is technically a little faster than the other two, if you side hop frame perfectly all the time. But it's kinda hard to steer Link in the right direction when you're side hopping, so realistically, the other two are usually faster. For optimal rolling, you have to space out your rolls just right, and for backwalking, you have to turn around first, which takes a bit of time. So I usually roll over shorter distances and backwalk over longer distances. In case you haven't noticed, I'm getting the sword and the shield. To get the shield I need 40 rupees, and I'm collecting some of those in the forest training grounds. This place has a bunch of signs that explain you can use Z targeting, and if you backflip in the right places, you can get rupees that the developers put in the air to reward you for messing around with that. Also, they put this sign here that explains you can do different sword attacks if you hold a direction on the analog stick while pressing B. And if you perform an attack like that on the sign, you also get 5 rupees. So my rupee route is basically doing all those things in quick succession. Getting these from the air, and slashing the sign. Now I'm gonna do this little frame-perfect jump slash to get on top of this bridge. I fail it the first time, but I get it second try. And I get 5 more rupees from on top of the bridge. Then 5 more rupees from these stepping stones. Then jump slash into the girl's text box to save a little bit more time. And then inside of the shop, there's 5 rupees behind the counter, which adds up to a total of 40, with which I can buy my shield. Now that I have a sword and a shield, I can go talk to Mido and proceed to the Deku Tree. I know it kinda seems like I'm doing the intended route up until this point, but remember, the only things I'm after are these 4 ingredients so I can fire a light arrow at Ganondorf. And even this little trip to the Deku Tree contributes to getting one of those items. For now, I'll leave you in the dark as to what that item is, but until then, I have a little trick to get to the Deku Tree faster. Basically, when you enter this cutscene, you lose control of Link, and the game increases Link's speed until he reaches this point. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump slash into this cutscene, and you can't walk during a jump slash, so the game's just building up speed and building up speed, until eventually the jump slash ends. And Link just shoots past this point with all the speed he's built up. Now, you can do this well and you can do this poorly. If you do it poorly, you barely end up any further than the points I marked right here. And if you do it well, you end up like halfway down the hill and you save a couple seconds. In this run, I did a pretty good job and Link ended up pretty far. So with that out of the way, we can enter the Deku Tree. The first little trick I'm going to do in the Deku Tree is skip some Navi texts. So right in front of the vines in the Deku Tree, there's this Navi text trigger where Navi tells you how you can climb the vines. But if I pull out my sword while walking through this trigger, it skips the text box, which saves a few seconds. That's because while pulling out an item, the game considers Link to be busy. You can get that same effect in a few different ways, which I'll go into a bit later. But for now, let's pause the run, take a step back, and I'll explain a few glitches before I do them. Normally when you do a sword attack, this is what happens. I've drawn a visual representation of the frames during a sword attack. On this frame during the animation, the sword's hitbox is made active. That means that the sword will glow and anything that touches it gets damaged by it. The sword stays active during these 3 frames, and on the frame after that, the game makes the sword hitbox inactive again, and the sword swinging animation finishes. However, when you do a crouch stab, and only when you do a crouch stab, it's possible to do a different action on that frame where the hitbox is supposed to be made inactive, like talking to an NPC, or picking up an item, or reading a sign. And when you do that, the game doesn't realize that the sword hitbox is supposed to be made inactive, and it stays active even when the sword swinging animation is over. This is called the Infinite Sword Glitch, or ISG for short, and it has a few interesting properties. Most obviously, you can absolutely destroy anything that gets close to you with your lightsaber-like sword, and the camera becomes kinda weird, but there's more. Normally when you walk off a ledge, Link jumps off, but with ISG active, Link loses the ability to jump off ledges. It's still possible to side up or backflip off though. Here's a really useful property of ISG. When you have ISG active, and you shield damage in midair, you'll hover in midair. I'll repeat that. When you have ISG active, and you shield damage in midair, you'll hover in midair. Nobody knows why it works that way, but it is really useful in speedruns to get to places you aren't supposed to go. You'll usually see people hovering off explosives, like bombs and bomb chews, but as you can see in these examples, you can basically use any damage source. It's just that explosives are the most versatile, since you can place them wherever you want. And what you're seeing right here is this really old strat for B1 skip that I really like. Look at that. That's cool. Anyway, before we move on, we gotta talk about side rolls. So, in Ocarina of Time, if you hold slightly down on the analog stick and roll, Link will do a side roll. You can also do a side roll after a backflip or after a side hop. If you hold Z during your side roll, Link will turn forward at the end of it, and if you don't hold Z, he won't. Side rolls have a few different uses, but the one I want to focus on right now is the backwards side hop. You see, since I'm holding Z during the side roll, Link will automatically turn forward once the roll is over. But before that happens, there's this frame where Link is facing to the right at the very end of his roll. On this frame, it's actually possible to side hop or backflip in a direction relative to Link's facing direction, meaning he can side hop forwards and backwards, or he can backflip to the side. If you hold Z during these backwards side hops and backflips, Link automatically turns forward in midair, much like he does after a side roll while holding Z. Note that backward side hops are frame perfect, because if I wait one extra frame before side hopping, Link will have already slightly turned forward, and the side hop doesn't go in the proper direction. Lastly, there's pause buffering. If you time it right, you can use the pause menu to advance the game frame by frame. It wastes a lot of time, 2 seconds for each pause, but it's really useful for some of the riskier frame perfect tricks. Now, my current objective is to break the web in the center of the Deku Tree without falling all the way down to the basement. I need to stay on the first floor. To break the web, you need to jump onto it from a certain height. The second floor isn't high enough, so you need to climb all the way to the top and jump from the third floor, right? Well, no. Here's what I do. I got ISG off of the Navi text box describing that Skulltula. Now I'm climbing up here. The sword's put away, but ISG is still active. Sometimes these Skulltulas notice you and hit you off the vines, but this run I got lucky. Now, hover off Skulltula damage, backwards side hop which lands on the web, pause buffer to the first frame where Link hits the web, and then side hop off to stay on the first floor. And now, it's gonna get complicated. So first off, this is a glitch called Vine Clip. If you get damaged in a certain frame while grabbing vines, they'll clip through the vines. Right there you saw it with a bomb, here it is again with a bomb chew, but again, you can use any damage source you want. So here's another weird thing, if you're out of bounds, and you're not on solid ground, an invisible timer starts counting to 10 seconds, and the instant it hits 10 seconds, your camera will lock in place and it won't follow Link around anymore. I have no idea why this is, but it is this way. Oh, and make a mental note of the sound when Link dives underwater. And the sound when you push C up to go into first person mode. Alright, now, I'm gonna get into this corner and do a really precise setup. More on how precise it is in a bit. Drop down, start holding forward on this frame, Vine Clip using gold Skulltula damage, start holding down on this frame, swim perfectly into this corner, and now I'm just gonna wait until the camera locks. But before we continue, my next objective is to get onto that land over there, while the game thinks I'm diving underwater. I'll explain why in a minute. Oh, and if you're still wondering why this setup is so precise, it's because Link's current position is really precise. If I were to accidentally sidewalk in between these side hops for even one frame, the setup would give me a slightly different angle and position, and I would just swim back in bounds. So when the camera locks, it messes with how first-person mode works. Basically, if I press C up with the locked camera, Link will behave like he's in first-person mode, even though he's not, you know, the camera's locked in third-person mode. Because of that, I can do a glitch called Dive Cancel. Listen closely. So what I did there is I went into quote-unquote first-person mode while diving on the same frame, which makes the game think I'm diving even though I'm not. So now I need to get onto these vines, and the reason my position was so precise is that if I actually move through this water for even one frame, the game will realize, like, oh, he's not diving underwater anymore. So I need to be so close to these vines that Link doesn't actually swim through this water for even one frame. He needs to instantly grab the vines. Also, if you haven't noticed, when the camera locked, I went into quote-unquote first-person mode and I slightly turned Link to the left. If I didn't do that, Link's angle would not face the vines directly enough and he wouldn't actually grab them, like what you're seeing right here. He needs to have at least like a 45-degree angle towards these vines. To work around it, you gotta understand, if you're walking forward and then you go slightly up left or slightly up right, Link walks in that exact same manner, but slightly diagonally. And that's true for swimming as well. Got that? Okay, so what I did right here is I slightly desynced the camera angle and Link's facing direction. So now, if I hold straight up on my analog stick, Link will walk straight up in relation to the camera, but slightly diagonally in relation to his facing direction. And when I stop walking, his angle will snap back to this facing direction. And when I do it like this, it is possible to climb these vines with this camera angle. And that same principle is going on in the water right here. Link's facing direction is slightly more to the left, while the camera is locked, so when I cancel my quote-unquote first-person mode, I'm holding straight up. Link will swim towards the vines, and his angle will snap so that it'll also grab onto the vines. But that's still not all, because I also need to cancel my quote-unquote first-person mode frame perfectly, because Link is constantly bobbing up and down in the water, and you see how he sometimes goes deeper than other times? I need to cancel my quote-unquote first-person mode after he bobs deep into the water, and again, frame perfectly. Luckily the de-bobbing and the shallow bobbing is in a fixed pattern, so I learned the pattern so I can predict a de-bob, then I pause buffer to the frame I need, and then I can cancel first-person mode and swim to these vines on that frame. So let's see it in action. I messed it up the first time because I buffered to the wrong frame, but I get it the second time. Okay, so now I'm on land while the game thinks I'm diving underwater. Notice this number on my A button, which normally only appears when you're diving underwater. Now here's why I did it. Normally, when you pick up an item like Deku Nuts for the first time, the game instantly plays this get item animation. But when the item is underwater, like the bottle with Rudo's letter or the Ocarina of Time, the game behaves a bit differently. It can't play the get item animation while Link is still diving underwater, so the game basically says, okay, pick up the item and delay the get item animation until Link resurfaces from water. That mechanic is called get item delay. And I'm abusing that exact same mechanic right here. The game thinks I'm diving underwater, so it goes, okay, pick up these Deku Nuts, but delay the get item animation until Link resurfaces from water. So if I were to jump into the water right now, the get item animation would play, and I would receive these Deku Nuts. But I'm not going to jump into the water quite yet. First, I'm climbing all the way up these vines. Now, you gotta understand, there's a value in the game's RAM that determines which item you receive with the get item animation, and currently that value is 2. And in the get item table, you can see that 2 points to Deku Nuts. The thing about this value is that it's not just used for items you pick up off the ground, it's also used for treasure chests. So for example, take the map chest, and the map is 65 in the get item table. It actually has 2 states to it. It can be positive or negative. If the value is positive, the game instantly gives you the item, and if the value is negative, you first have to open a chest to get the item. So if I walk in front of the map chest, the value changes to negative 65, and then when I open the chest, it changes to positive 65. But what I'm doing is I walk in front of the map chest and then jump into the water. So now when I resurface from water, I'll get item negative 65 from the get item table. And by the way, manipulating this value is called get item manipulation, or GIM for short. So now I'm doing this setup again because I want to do this glitch twice. But watch what happens when Link resurfaces from the water. Boom, I just got a bottle with blue potion. Now, I'm not actually interested in that potion itself, but the bottle is going to be really useful later on in the run. When I pause, you're going to be able to see it in my inventory. There it is. So, the bottle is conveniently on the way, but it's not the real reason I went to the Deku Tree. The real reason is so that I can do this glitch again, and I can use Deku Nuts for this again since I never actually obtained those Deku Nuts. And now I'll do game with this little chest over here. This chest only has like a heart in it, but if I use it for GIM... Boom, I just got light arrows. That's right. And then I'm gonna kill myself using this gold Skulltula because when you die in a dungeon, the game spawns Link at the entrance of the dungeon. And that's a faster way to exit the Deku Tree than to climb the vines and go out the normal way. But yeah, I just got light arrows. So that's one item off the checklist. And that basically skips the Shadow in the Spirit Temple. Now, one more thing I want to mention about GIM is that the graphic that renders above Link's head during this animation crashes on N64. So that's why this route is only possible on Wii Virtual Console and on GameCube. Some people get really angry when you tell them that, so if there's any of those people listening, let me just remind you that any version officially released by Nintendo is equally legitimate for speedruns. That's how we decided to handle it, partially because it opens up interesting routing options that are version exclusive, like this one. And it goes both ways, you know. There's also a bunch of routes that are exclusive to N64 or exclusive to GameCube, and in my opinion, it's just part of what makes OoT such an interesting speed game. Whereas in games like Super Mario 64, the only difference between versions relevant for speedruns is lag and load times. So what I'm gonna do now is escape the forest without beating the Deku Tree. So this loading zone down here leads to Zora's River, and you're supposed to only be able to use it after getting the silver skill so you can dive deeper, but if you do a jump slash into the corner of this stone with a specific angle and position, you can clip into it and just swim into the loading zone. And I'm usually better at this trick, I promise. So now I'm just gonna go down Zora's River and collect a bunch of rupees along the way. Okay, you see how the river splits off into 2 separate streams right here? The left one is faster, but the right one has a red rupee at the end of it, and I kinda need that, so I'm gonna do a jump slash, and the recoil gives me so much backwards momentum that I get the red rupee at the end of this stream. Now I'm gonna jump slash this waterfall here, and I can actually preserve the backwards momentum from the jump slash recoil using a glitch called a super swim, which saves a few seconds. Now, I need to explain something. You know how Link has several different movement speeds depending on how far you hold the analog stick? If you hold the analog stick just slightly away from the neutral position, Link just shuffles in place. Well, the developers actually forgot to assign a movement speed to this. So as long as you're doing it, your speed will be retained. We call this position ESS position, which stands for Extended Super Slide Position. As you can see right here, if you hold Z while holding ESS position, Link will just shuffle in place and his angle won't change. Here's an example of retaining the movement speed. Here I'm just keeping the backwards momentum from my crouch stab using ESS position, which that's neat and all, but obviously it's kind of slow. As you might have already guessed, this slide with ESS position is called an ESS, or an Extended Super Slide. You can also do an ESS from water, appropriately called a Water Extended Super Slide, or WES. Now obviously this also looks slow, but it becomes more interesting if you throw a jump slash into the mix. This is what it looks like when you do a WES with jump slash recoil speed. Obviously this is way faster than just walking, so that's exactly what I'm going to do right here. A WES with the backwards momentum from a jump slash recoil. Also, remember how I skipped Navi in the Deku Tree by pulling my sword because the game considered Link to be busy? ESS position also makes it so Link is busy, which means the owl in front of Kakariko Village won't talk to me. One thing that's obviously kind of annoying about WESing is that you can't really see where you're going, so it can be kind of tricky to make it over that bridge. So there's a bunch of red rupees hidden on top of this drawbridge. I think you were intended to only get those as a reward for standing on top of the closed drawbridge, but even if the drawbridge is open, they're still there. So if you're a casual player and you need more rupees for like bomb shoe bowling or whatever, the drawbridge is probably the fastest way to get money. Now, all those rupees really weren't that far out of the way, so the fastest way to get this Hylian shield in this route is buying it in this shop. There's also a Hylian shield in the chest in the graveyard, but in this route that's slower. So normally, to become Adult Link, you need to open the Door of Time, which requires the 3 spiritual stones from the Child Dungeons and the Song of Time. But you see this little crack in the left side of the Door of Time? It's possible to clip out of bounds using that. So what I'm going to do is a setup to get a really precise angle, then backwards side hop to clip out of bounds, jump slash back in bounds, and then side hop past the Door of Time. And now I can just pick up the Master Sword and become Adult. So there's like a 4-minute cutscene coming up where Link learns his destiny, where he needs to like save the world and all that, but here's the thing. As adults, I'm gonna do another method of item manipulation called Reverse Bottle Adventure, or RBA for short. And people always think that RBA is really complicated, but it honestly really isn't. You just gotta take your time to explain it. So during this cutscene, I'll explain how bottles work, and it's gonna seem like really trivial information, but trust me, you're gonna need it if you want to understand RBA later on in the run. So the first thing you gotta understand is that the game sees every item as a number. Deku Sticks are item 0, Deku Nuts are item 1, Bombs are 2, and so on and so forth. Now, to properly explain how bottles work, I'm gonna use BizHawk, an N64 emulator that allows you to look at the values of individual bytes in the game's RAM. This is what Ocarina of Time's RAM looks like. Some of you might be confused by all the letters you see mixed in here with these numbers, but that's just because the RAM is displayed using hexadecimal counting, which you're probably not used to. For your viewing pleasure, I'll convert the hexadecimal numbers to normal decimal numbers in this column, and I'll also label what each byte is used for. In reality, each byte consists of 8 bits that can either be 0 or 1. Since there's 256 different combinations possible with that, the highest possible value for each byte is 255, which is FF in hexadecimals. With that in mind, let's talk about what these bytes represent. These 24 bytes represent the 24 slots in the item subscreen in your inventory. I've labeled them 0 to 23. As you can see, the value of each byte corresponds with the number of the item in that slot. So in slot 0, we got item 0, which is Deku Sticks. In slot 7, we got item 8, which is the Ocarina of Time. And in slot 23, we got item 40, which is the Goron Mask. Now, let's talk about what happens when you equip an item to a C button. These 3 bytes are used for C left, C down, and C right respectively. When you equip an item from your inventory, the value of the item gets written to the C button byte. So, if I equip Deku Stick to C left byte becomes 0, if I equip Ocarina of Time to C down byte becomes 8, and if I equip Goron Mask to C right, the C right byte becomes 40. That system would work in and of itself if it weren't for bottles, because you have 4 different bottle slots, 18 to 21, all of which can have any combination of bottle items, and they all have to operate independently from one another. The way they programmed that is that they use these 3 bytes that I'm going to call the C button offsets, which store the number of the inventory slot you're using. So back to our previous example, Deku Sticks are in slot 0, the Ocarina of Time is in slot 7, and the Goron Mask is in slot 23. Or if I equip a bottled fish, item 25, from my first bottle slot, which is slot 18, these bytes correspond with that, item 25, slot 18. There's also this byte way further down in the RAM that tracks the last button you used. 0 is B, 1 is C left, 2 is C down, and 3 is C right. Note that this byte only updates if you actually use the item on the button. For example, it doesn't change if I press a C button during a spin attack, only if I actually use the item. With all that in mind, let's see how all these bytes work together when using bottles. So here I have an empty bottle, item 20, from inventory slot 19, equipped to C down. I'm going to catch bugs, and a bottle with bugs is item 29. When I catch the bugs, first the game checks which button I used. The value is 2, so I used C down. Then it needs to update 2 bytes, the C down byte and the byte of the inventory slot. So first it writes 29 to the C down byte, and then it goes 3 bytes further, 1, 2, 3, to check which inventory slot is being used, which is 19, and then it writes 29 to that inventory slot. Now let's equip that to C right and see what happens when I drop bugs. First the game checks which button I used. Value is 3, so I used C right. Then it writes 20 to the C right byte, goes 3 bytes further, 1, 2, 3, inventory slot is 19, so it writes 20 to that inventory slot. And all this stuff happens on the same frame. So again, this information will be relevant for a glitch in a few minutes, so I hope it didn't bore you too much. At least the Master Sword cutscene is almost over now, but instead of walking out of the Temple of Time normally, I have to save warp, because look at the door time. It looks like it's not there, but if I were to walk up there, it would fucking load right in front of me, since I never actually opened it. It is possible to get out of bounds in this room, but I can't get to the other side without hover boots. Fortunately, if I save and reload my file outside of a dungeon, Link spawns in the Temple of Time at the other side of the door, so there's really no problem. And you can see the loaded door time from this side. Now, some of you might be wondering how it's possible that I have bombs equipped, because if you've been paying attention, I never actually obtained bombs. So why are they there? Well, when you pick up the Master Sword for the first time, chances are that you have items equipped to your C buttons that you're only supposed to be able to use as child, like Boomerang, Slingshot, or Deku Sticks. So the game can't just carry over your equips. They also didn't want to give you blank C buttons, so by default, they equip Deku Nuts, Bombs, and Ocarina when you first go adult. If you don't have Deku Nuts, it doesn't equip them. If you don't have Ocarina, it doesn't equip it, but for whatever reason, even if you don't have Bombs, it still equips them. Don't get too excited though, because I can't get bomb drops, and I don't have a bomb bag, so right now it's useless. Also, I have to drink my blue potion at some point, and this is the best spot to do it, because if I flick up, it gives me the perfect backwalk angle to optimally make it to this ledge. Small optimizations, you know. So there's 2 reasons I need to be in Kakariko. First, I need to catch bugs. The bugs will be useful for a glitch later on, and then I need to start the Bigoron Sword Trade quests, which begins by getting the pocket egg from the Cuckoo Lady. The reason for this will be revealed to you in a few minutes, but for now, just accept that my goal is to do a bit of this trade quest. So the first thing I need to do is hatch the pocket egg, for which I need to wait an entire day and night cycle. You would think that the fastest way to do that without the Sun Song is to go to Hyrule Field, wait for it to become night, then wait for it to become day. But instead of doing that, I'm going back to the Temple of Time. So I'm going to the Ganon's castle area, because in this area, it's always 6:29 PM. It doesn't matter what the time was before you entered the area, it always changes to 6:29 PM. And I'm using that to my advantage to hatch the pocket egg faster. It's actually so weird that it works like that. Like, you see the time right here? Okay, so I'm gonna go to the Ganon's castle area, come back, boom, 6:29 PM. Now, I know 1829 seems like kind of a random number, but fun fact, the any percent world record for this game was 1829 at one point, in like 2014. And who knew, you know, that record was actually hidden inside of the game all along. I don't know, I think it's neat. Anyway, when I'm in Hyrule Field, it doesn't matter if I waste time, because I have to wait for day anyway. So that's a great opportunity to show off some swag strats, such as inverted camera. Man, you can't have a no wrong warp run without inverted camera, that's just wrong. So I need 20 rupees in total to buy something later on, and this grass gave me more than enough, so we good. Although it doesn't matter too much if I don't get enough rupees here, because there's a few other places in the route where I'm guaranteed to get rupees without wasting too much time. I'll mention it when I get there. Now I'm going to do an untargeted backflip where I release Z and backflip on the same frame. Which, I know I'm not impressing anyone, but I think it looks neat. Alright, now it's time for the real shit. I'm going to do this setup and drop bugs so I can catch him again later. I'm going to side hop, and in midair, I pull out my bottle, and then I quick draw my sword, which means I press B to pull my sword, Link's hand reaches for the sword, but before he actually starts pulling it out, the animation is interrupted by Link hitting the water. And then when I float to the shore, the last button used is B, even though there's a bottle in Link's hand. And that's what I want. Now, the reason I had to do this setup is that after you land in the water, and Link actually starts swimming, he puts away the item in his hand. So if I want to use the water to interrupt the animation, without putting away the bottle, Link has to instantly float to the shore. That's why this setup is necessary. So now I'm going to hold target, shield, and the button for my bottle all at the same time. And when I release shield, Link will swing the bottle, and it wasn't pushing the C button that caused the bottle swing, it was releasing shield. So it doesn't update the last button used. It's called a shield swipe, and because the last button used was still B from the quick draw, the game writes the bottle to my B button. Now, we know how the game handles bottles on the C buttons, but how does it handle a bottle on B? Well, this is the byte for the item on B, which is supposed to only ever be used for your swords. If there's a bottle on there and I catch bugs in it, the game just goes through the normal routine. So first it checks which button I used, value is 0, so I used B. Then it writes 29 to the B button, goes 3 bytes further, 1, 2, 3, and whoa! While trying to find the inventory slot it's supposed to write to, it checks the value of the item that's equipped to your actual C right button. So right now there's a hookshot on C right, which is item 10, so the bottle on B will use inventory slot 10, and write 29 to inventory slot 10. Or if I equip bombs, item 2 to C right, and drop the bugs from my B bottle, it writes an empty bottle, item 20, to inventory slot 2. So by equipping items 0 through 23 to C right, we can write bottles to any slot in the inventory. Now that's neat and all, but it becomes more interesting when you equip items 24 and beyond to C right. We're basically able to write the item value of the B button bottle to any of these bytes. So let's explore what these bytes are used for, shall we? At items 24 through 38, the bytes are basically assigned to inventory slots again, but this time, they're used for the amount of ammo you have for each item. So 24 is used for Deku Stick amounts, 25 for Deku Nut amounts, 26 for bomb amounts, 27 for arrow amounts, 28 and 29 are unused since fire arrows and Din's fire don't use ammo of their own, 30 is slingshot ammo, and it basically goes on like that until magic beans, which is the last item in the inventory that uses ammo. So if I have full milk, item 26 on C right, my bottle on B value will be written to the bomb count. Here you can see how dropping and catching bugs makes it go back and forth between 29 and 20. And by the way, this glitch is called Reverse Bottle Adventure, or RBA for short. I know that's a really non-descriptive name, but I wouldn't want it to be any different. It just sounds cool, doesn't it? Reverse Bottle Adventure, RBA. Anyway, I think you get the point with this ammo RBA, so let's move on. Item 39 points to the byte that tracks the amount of magic beans you've bought, which is tracked separately from the amount of magic beans that you have. That's because the price raises as you buy more beans. And if it's 9 or higher, the guy won't sell you anymore. So manipulating those values is pretty cool, but item 40 and 41 is when it gets even crazier. These two bytes determine which swords, shields, tunics, and boots you have in your equipment subscreen. Remember how I said that each byte is really 8 bits that can either be 0 or 1? Well, that's how we should interpret these bytes. Each bit represents an item in the equipment subscreen. If you have the item, the bit is 1, and if you don't have it, it's 0. Now, if we're gonna write the bottle on B to that byte, it's important to know what combinations of 1s and 0s we have available to us. This is a list of all the bottle items we can use for RBA with their respective binary values. So as you can see, right now I have all the tunics and boots, and then if I drop bugs with the Goron mask on C right, it's gonna write an empty bottle to this byte, which means there will be 1s on the Kokiri boots and Zora tunic, and 0s everywhere else. And as you can see, that's exactly what happened. Everything disappeared except Kokiri boots and Zora tunic. Now if I catch bugs, it's gonna have 1s for Kokiri boots, this unused bit, Zora tunic, and Kokiri tunic. And that's what happened. So that's pretty much all RBA is. You get a bottle on B, and then you can write these values to any byte in the memory that you can access with C write. Now I'm not gonna go over every single C write item and its results in this video, but I'll show you a few more before we continue. 42 through 44 are unused, and then we get to the adult trade items. As you can see, these store a bunch of different things from your equipment subscreen, and this time there's multiple bits deciding what item you're gonna get. So for example, these 3 bits determine what your dive meter is. If we were to make a table with all the possible combinations of 1s and 0s, we'd get something like this. If it's 001, you get the silver scale. If it's 010, you get the gold scale. And if it's anything else, you get some glitched item. So for example, right now I have the silver scale, but when I drop bugs, it writes an empty bottle to this byte, which means the bits for the dive meter are set to 010. And as you can see, I now have the gold scale. Then if I catch bugs, it's gonna set this part to 110, which means I'll get this glitched item that looks like Deku seeds. And there it is. Okay, I think you get the point, so let's continue. We'll first watch the quick draw bottle on B section again, because I think it looks really clean at full speed. Now as you can see, I'm gonna have bombs on C right when I RBA. I'm gonna write an empty bottle into my bomb slot, because if there's any item in my bomb slot, the game will give me bomb drops. Doesn't matter which item, as long as there's an item in my bomb slot, I can get bomb drops. I can't pick them up yet, because I don't have a bomb bag, but I can get the drops now. And by the way, dropping bugs isn't wasting time, because in-game time still passes during the little bottle cutscene. It only freezes while the text box is up. Now, bonking this tree always gives you 3 hearts, unless you have full health, in which case it gives you 3 rupees. This is one of the guaranteed rupee places that I talked about. Here's another little swag strat, the Gainer, which is an untargeted backflip, then target the wall on the next frame, and then you get a backflip with forward momentum. Pretty cool. And now I'm just gonna wait for day. I'm gonna want to side hop into this loading zone rather than walk into it, because the speed at which Link enters the next area depends on the speed at which he entered the loading zone. So if I were to just walk into this loading zone, I would have barely accelerated, and Link would enter Kakariko really slowly, whereas a side hop makes him enter Kakariko at full speed. So I'm not gonna RBA the Pocket Cuckoo, I'm just gonna go on with the trade quests. Right now I need to make the Pocket Cuckoo happy by letting it wake up a very heavy sleeper, which is Talon. And then I can go trade it for Kajiro. And Kajiro is extremely useful because Kajiro points to the byte that tracks your bomb bag and your quiver. So when I write bugs to that byte, it's gonna give me a bomb bag with the value of 011, which is a bomb bag 40, and a quiver with the value of 101, which is a glitched quiver that holds 20 arrows. So as soon as I catch bugs in my B bottle with Kajiro on C right, I'll have perfectly usable bombs without ever setting foot in the Drongo's cavern, and I'll have a quiver, so that can be crossed off the list of light arrow requirements. And I'm gonna get bugs from under this rock. So right now my first concern is getting bomb drops, which has a 1 out of 16 chance of happening. And it happened on the rock in Kakariko this run. But that's the God Rock, you know, that's the best RNG you can get. And my child section was decent, so right now I'm thinking like, holy shit, this run has serious potential. I better not fuck this up. So naturally, the first thing I do is fuck something up by not turning around right here when pulling the bomb. This Mega Flip was supposed to reach the water, and I wanted to west out of that, but I failed it. I'll do it again later though, so you'll see it then. Failing that wasted somewhere around 15 to 20 seconds. The way Mega Flips work is that at the end of your roll, you have quite a few frames where Link is invincible. Like, here you can see me rolling into this Skulltula, and Link isn't taking damage at all. If you walk into it, you lose 1 heart, but rolls have invincibility frames. And basically, if you shield damage on those invincibility frames, you can maintain the backwards momentum you get from the bomb explosion in a backflip or a side hop. So that's how Mega Flips and Mega Side Hops work. And like with hovering, you can use any damage source, but explosives are just the most convenient. So if I hadn't gotten God Rock, I would be over at the rock circle in front of Mido's house right now looking for bombs, with a 1 out of 16 chance. So needless to say, a lot of runs die there. There's also a tree in front of Kokiri Forest that I would always bonk into to try to get bombs. And same 1 out of 16 chance, but I would almost never get them. It was so infuriating. Like, I would watch other Ocarina of Time runners just try no wrong work for a little while, and I swear to God, all of them got tree bombs, but not me. It took me forever to finally get them, even though God Rock wasn't even that rare for me. It was retarded. Well, anyway, I just traded Kajiro for the Odd Mushroom, and the Odd Mushroom only points to how many heart pieces you have, so it's not very useful. I fucking love shield flicking along with the music. So right now I gotta go back to Kakariko, and I can't go back through Kokiri Forest, because if I did, I would get the cutscene where Saria gives you the fairy ocarina, because I never actually got that. And besides, I don't think it's even faster to go that way without using more explosives. Speaking of which, I only have 5 bombs, which isn't much, so they all have a purpose. 3 of them are absolutely necessary, like the one I just used to blow up that rock. And 2 of them can be used for time saves, which, in this run, both of those are used to try to west across Hyrule Field. So there's this rock circle in front of Goron City, where every rock gives you 3 hearts, unless you have full health, in which case it gives you 3 rupees. So if I somehow still don't have 20 rupees at this point, that's where I get more. But that's pretty rare. You usually get enough rupees during the night. If my movement's good here, I get to the loading zone faster than this boulder, which I did, so that's nice. And now we can finally spend these rupees at the shop in Kakariko. And of course, I'm gonna buy arrows, so we can cross that off the list. And now the only remaining ingredient for firing a light arrow is magic. Now for the trade quest, I need to be in the potion shop, and to get there I'm just gonna jump on top of this roof, which is faster than going through the house. There's actually a bit of an oddity with this part of this trade quest. You see this white text that appears when you enter the shop? As long as that text is up, I can't show the item to the woman. It just doesn't work. So what people used to do is pull out the item twice. Once to get rid of the potion shop text, then another time to actually trade the item. But if you press the button for the item while holding ESS position, the text goes away without pulling out the item, so that's even faster. So we're getting the odd potion, and I'm not going to use it in this run, but the odd potion is pretty cool. If you RBA'd with bugs, you get all the 3 spiritual stones and the Song of Time. Again, that's not useful for us right now, but it's pretty sweet. The next item in the trade quest is in Lost Woods again, so we're going to go back there. Oh, and by the way, if I ever equip anything over my bombs, they're gone forever. I won't be able to get them back, so that would be run over right there. And yeah, I have actually lost runs that way. So this time I actually do get this West, and it's making me go at a speed of 18. So it's exactly twice as fast as backwalking. Normally I take this West all the way to the loading zone, but I turned a bit too much this time, so I just rolled the last part. It's not that much slower, and I know from experience that if I try to ESS change earlier to try to correct it, it usually goes badly, and I didn't want to risk that on this kind of pace. If I didn't get 3 bombs, I would use a bomb here to mega flip onto the side of the bridge as a little shortcut, which saves like 7 seconds. The weird thing about that is, back in the day, people used to pressure jump here, where the bomb explosion damage boosts you onto the side of the bridge. Not only is pressure jump slower, but the current method of mega flipping has been known since like 2007, so I really don't know why pressure jump was around for so long. So right now I'm trading the odd potion for the poacher saw, and the poacher saw is really useful because it points to the bite that tracks a bunch of songs, including Zelda's Lullaby. So that pretty much solves it. Now I can just go to the top of Death Mountain, RBA the poacher saw, play Zelda's Lullaby and get magic, and then I'll finally be able to fire a light arrow so we can go beat the game. So to climb Death Mountain, what people used to do is leave Goron City at the top exit and go all the way through Death Mountain Trail to get to the top of the mountain. But what I'm gonna do is a setup for a mega side hop in order to ground clip into the Runia's room. And now I can go through Death Mountain Crater, which is much faster. Now, if you release the statue on the same frame that it starts to move, you can go into the loading zone a little bit faster, but I missed it in this run. The thing about that trick is that if you release the statue late, Link just pulls it normally and is not that much slower. If you release it early, you have to start pulling the statue all over again, and if you do that a couple times, you can lose a lot of time. So I usually time this trick a little bit on the late side. So the length of the heat timer depends on how many hearts you have. It's 8 seconds for every full heart. So all this time, I had to make sure not to lose too much health, otherwise I wouldn't have enough time here. And I'm going to use my last bomb to blow up the boulder covering this grotto, as I almost walk a full circle around it. And this grotto is really convenient, because it has a chest in it that contains 20 bombs. So that's plenty to make it to the end of the game, and even do some small time savers along the way. Now I gotta explain something. If you have a bottle with bugs in your hand, and then in mid-air, you press the button for your bugs, the game basically goes, okay, as soon as Link lands on the ground, play the cutscene with the item in his hand. Which, for bugs, the cutscene is dropping the bugs. But what you can also do is get a bottle with bugs in your hand, and then in midair, you press the button for your bugs, and then before touching the ground, you pull out another item, like bombs. And the game still goes, play the cutscene with the item in Link's hand, but there is no cutscene with bombs, so it just plays the default cutscene, which is playing the ocarina. It's called Ocarina Items, and it allows you to play almost all items as an ocarina. So that pretty much skips the fairy ocarina. So up until this point, this run was decent, you know? Like, I had the best possible RNG, and my movement was pretty solid, but there were quite a few tricks that I failed or that I got second try or something. Like, nothing too major, but I did lose little bits of time on quite a few different occasions. However, from this moment onward, I literally play the best I've ever played before. Like, I literally gold every single split. Aside from Collapse, and the only reason I didn't gold that was that I didn't have enough bombs to super slide, but if I did, I would have tied my gold. So I didn't lose time anywhere else in that segment. Point is, the main reason this is a good run is the late game. So I just got magic, and that means that I now have usable light arrows, as well as a sword, shield, and bombs. So I have everything I need. I'm done with item manipulation, and now I'll just go to Ganon's castle and finish the run. So now I'll equip light arrows, and I still need to get rid of my bottle on B, which is as simple as just equipping Master Sword again. And the Master Sword equip didn't make a noise for some reason. I like to think that just happens if you do it really fast. Also, one thing that I haven't mentioned yet about the trade quests is that if you mash B too hard when mashing through text, you can accidentally drop the bugs from your B bottle right before receiving the next item. Which means potentially you fuck up RBA for your previous trade item, and then automatically move on to the next one before you can fix it. So you gotta be careful with your mashing there. So like I said at the beginning of this video, you normally enter Ganon's castle with this rainbow bridge, and to get the cutscene where the rainbow bridge is built, you need light arrows, shadow medallion, and spirit medallion. Obviously I don't have those medallions, so we're just gonna have to hover across. So I line up with the part that I want to hover to, get ISG, and the reason I'm walking after getting ISG is that I missed it the first time, so I knew I'd get hit by the bomb explosion. And if you get damaged while standing still, you lose ISG, but if you get damaged while moving, you don't lose it, so that's why I did that. And these hovers were a pretty big run killer. To give you an idea of how hard this is, you have 3 frames to drop the bomb, and the frame window for the backflip depends on which frame you drop the bomb. So if I drop first frame, I can backflip on this frame and this frame. If I drop second frame, I can backflip on this frame and this frame. And if I drop third frame, I can backflip on this frame and this frame. So the visual cues for the backflip are totally different depending on the drop frame, which means that I pause buffer the drop frame and then react accordingly. The biggest problem with this trick is that you have to do 7 hovers in a row. If you fail one of them, you fall down and lose your run. Another big problem is that the first and second drop frame look identical, so I have to just get a feel for when I got first and when I got second. And whenever I'm not sure, I pause buffer the backflip frame. So ideally this trick uses 7 pauses, and this time I used 10 pauses. So only 3 extra pauses, which makes it by far the best hover I've ever done in a run. Oh, and sometimes you saw me pull the bow, and that was just to reset the camera. Now coming up we have the trials. The loading zone to get to Ganondorf is guarded by a damage barrier, and you're supposed to break the damage barrier by beating all the trials. Basically what loading zones are is they're just collision polygons that load a new scene when Link is standing over them and there's no geometry between them. So these polygons past the damage barrier are flagged to be loading zones. And for whatever reason, this polygon in front of the water trial is also flagged to be a loading zone. Part of it is covered by the damage barrier, but there's still enough room for Link to stand on it, so that's how I'm gonna skip the trials. I'm gonna get ISG off of a bomb, and then do a staircase hover to the loading zone. I know I got that second try, but because of how good the hover was, this was still a goal split by 5 seconds. Before we go into the mini-boss battles, let's talk about Link's sword attacks. It's kind of weird that we're only getting to that now, at the very end of the run, but this is the first time in the whole run that I'm actually fighting enemies. So, with the Master Sword, every attack does 2 damage, except for jump slashes, those do 4 damage, and fully charged spin attacks, which also do 4 damage. And then there's the crouch stab. If you're a casual player, you probably never really use the crouch stab, because you either Z-target all your enemies, or just mash B. Or at least I think the developers did that, because they forgot to assign a damage value to crouch stabs. So how much damage do crouch stabs do? They do the same damage as your last sword attack. So if I enter a new scene, by default, my crouch stabs do 1 damage. Then if I slash normally, all my crouch stabs will do 2 damage. And if I jump slash, all my crouch stabs will do 4 damage. This is called power crouch stabbing, or PCS for short, and is usually the fastest way to defeat enemies, alongside ISG, which comes from a crouch stab, so it also uses power crouch stab damage. So with that out of the way, let's get to the mini-boss battles. First up we got the Nulfos, and they have 12 health. I'm gonna charge up a spin attack, which lasts for so long that it hits each of them twice, and then I use quick spins to finish them off. This was actually a really good fight, because they usually just hop all over the place, but this time they were nice. Next up we got the Stalfos, which have 10 health. And Stalfos fights are pretty hard to get good at, because they're always blocking. You can only hit them if they're trying to attack you, so you have to predict when they attack you, and then crouch stab them in their right foot where they don't have their shield. Right here I shield his attack, so he leaves an opening where I can stab him. It's easiest to hit them in mid-air when they're doing their jump attack at you, and they also leave an opening for a few frames right after you hit them, so you can kind of get into a rhythm of crouch stabbing them there. Again, this was a really good fight. The last mini-boss is Iron Knuckles, which have 30 health, and if they have 10 health or less, their armor breaks. And as long as they still have armor, they won't flinch when you stab them, so you have to avoid all their attacks. And the scary thing about their attacks is that they do 4 hearts of damage, so it's a one-hit kill. And after their armor breaks, it's pretty safe though, although this black gun came pretty close to hitting me. And then I aim my bow at the door because it makes the camera go apeshit. Like, it pretty much goes to the other room for some reason. Iron Knuckles are scary, man. Like, they're not hard, but if you fuck up, one hit and it's over, you know? Like, I've lost quite a few good runs to them, especially when I first started playing No Wrong Warp. So now I'm gonna do a hyper-extended super slide up these stairs, which is basically just holding ESS position and shielding damage during multiple invincibility frames. Gives you a speed of 18. Up these stairs it only saves 4 seconds though, which is not as much as you'd expect. Now coming up we have the Ganondorf fight, in which Ganondorf shoots a light ball at you, and you're supposed to play tennis basically, until Ganondorf fucks up, and then you can stun him with a light arrow and damage him. Now to hit back the light ball, not only can you use your sword, you can also use an empty bottle. And you probably knew that already because it's a pretty well-known Easter egg, but I just think it's ironic because undoubtedly, when the developers were implementing this Easter egg, they were giggling and saying like, hey look guys, you can defeat Ganondorf with like the weakest item in the game, haha XD. Like that's the whole joke. However, it should be pretty obvious to you at this point that the bottle is one of the strongest items in the game. Like, I only covered RBA and Ocarina items, but there's also bottle adventure, bottle duping, cutscene dives, drinking fake potions, fairy duping with equip swap. Like, bottles are really broken, and the fact that we defeat Ganondorf with the item that we glitched into our inventory back in the Deku Tree, an item that basically carries the whole run, is pretty awesome. And also, hitting back the light ball with the bottle is actually easier than with the sword, and I already had it equipped anyway. Also, while watching this cutscene, let's take some time to appreciate the fact that this category barely has any cutscenes. Like, that's definitely one of the redeeming factors of this route. So in this fight, if you stand on the outer square, Ganondorf does a light ball attack, and if you stand on the middle island, he'll punch the floor to hit you off. What I do is, I wait until he starts doing the light ball attack, and then I jump to the middle island to hit back the light ball, which gives him no time to react, so it always hits him first try. Then I shoot him with a light arrow, and
kill him with ISG. And I pull out the bow mostly because it looks cool, holding the bow up in his face like Link's about to pop his ass, but also because it makes it so that the sword hitbox is always in the right spot to damage him. So Ganondorf's defeated, and to avenge us, he's gonna let the tower collapse. And we have 3 minutes to walk all the way down the tower. Now what you gotta know about the tower collapse sequence is that it consists of 2 separate scenes. Tower collapse exterior and tower collapse interior.
These 2 separate scenes are connected by loading zones that are marked A through H.
On a scene, only 1 room is loaded at a time, which means the textures and the actors of only 1 room are loaded.
And an actor is basically the umbrella term for all the NPCs and all the objects.
So even though only 1 room's textures and actors are loaded, the collision and loading zones of the entire scene are always loaded. So if I'm in this room up here, all the other rooms will be invisible, since their textures aren't loaded, but all the floors and walls are still there, and the loading zones still work, and every scene in the game works that way. Now for the tower collapse exterior, the special thing is that you void out if you jump off. The way they handled that is, as soon as Link jumps off the edge, the game stores the height at which he jumped off, and as soon as he's a certain distance below that height, the game voids him out. So it's height dependence. And when you void out, the game just places you at these coordinates at the top of the tower. Now obviously, I didn't just tell you those things for no reason. Knowing these things, you should be able to understand this glitch coming up right here a bit more easily. So what I'm going to do right now is ESS turn left, then 3 slashes to slightly alter my position, and now these side-outs will end up in the perfect spots that I clip out of bounds with the fence, and the bomb explosion hits Link into this loading zone, and makes him void on the same frame. And as a result, the game will load this room, but it places Link at the coordinates of the void at the top of the tower from the other scene. And now I can jump slash to this unloaded room down here, and make my way to the loading zone at the very end of the collapse sequence. That glitch is called Void Warp, and some runs die there because a falling rock can hit Link off the edge before the bomb explodes, but that doesn't really happen to me, it's kind of more Xwazzle's thing. And I could have super slided in this hallway to save 2 seconds, but I don't have enough bombs left. And now I'm doing a setup for the kiss, so Zelda pushes Link into the loading zone to save frames. I bet some of the more attentive viewers are currently thinking, okay Jelster, let me get this straight. Because of this void warp, the loading zone warped you to the wrong coordinates. Isn't that a wrong warp? Good question. It actually used to be, but not anymore. Back in 2013, when void warp was first discovered, all the no RBA wrong warp runners basically went, fuck that shit, this is obviously a wrong warp, so let's just ban it and walk down the tower normally. For a theoretical collapse skip without void warp, it would be ideal to clip out of bounds and hit this loading zone, but that wasn't possible because it's so low that you always void out before making it there. But in November of 2015, Skater found a way to do exactly that, so we could finally skip the Stalfos fight in this room. How did Skater do it? The trick is to get hit by a bomb explosion in mid-air. First he does a Hesta clip out of bounds, and when he clips, this is the stored height for the void. And as soon as he gets hit by the bomb, this becomes the stored height for the void. So that allows him to make it low enough to hit the loading zone before voiding out. The description of Skater's video stated, we just need a setup now. And the reason that was a problem is you need the bomb to explode on the right frame, you need to shield drop said bomb on the right frame, and you gotta jump slash on the right frame, so that Link perfectly ends up in this loading zone, which is pretty precise. But basically, I developed the entire trick from that point on. Like, I found the cues, I found out which exact combinations of input timings worked, and I made a 16-minute tutorial that explained the whole thing. And that was my first real contribution to this game. And so the whole trick was figured out, and everyone learned from my tutorial. But then, people kind of stepped back, and they went, this trick is a fucking nightmare, especially at the very end of the run, when you're most nervous. And the wrong warps that we want to ban are the ones with blue warps, which is a completely different glitch. If we allow Void Warp, literally the only change in any route will be Collapse Skip. Those were fair points, so in January of 2016, there was a vote, and well, the majority wanted Void Warp to be allowed, so here we are. My biggest contribution to this game was obsoleted by a rule change in less than 2 months. In case you're wondering what I voted, I didn't participate in that vote because I have very mixed feelings about it all. Like, on one hand, Collapse Skip is kind of my baby, but on the other hand, it really does suck, and Void Warp is infinitely easier. But enough about that, let's talk about Super Slides. If you grab an object and then shield right after, Link gets in this weird state. And the nice thing about this state is that the developers did not assign a movement speed to it, so if you get into this state during a roll, and you get damaged during your invincibility frames, you get a Super Slide. So to do this, you need a grabbable object and a damage source. And bombs just so happen to be both of those things. So what I do right here is drop one bomb, which is my damage source, store jump slash damage, place the second bomb, which is my grabbable object, and then I super slide.
You're probably wondering why that super slide was necessary, and we'll get to that, but first, Ganon. He has two phases. The first phase is 10 health, and the second phase is 20 health. In the first phase, he knocks away your Master Sword, and all of Lil Link's other weapons have their damage temporarily changed to 1, so it's supposed to take 10 hits. In the second phase, you pick up the Master Sword and finish him off. Now, the only weapons I currently have are bombs and light arrows, which are really slow, so I did a super slide into this cutscene so Ganon can't knock away my sword. Like, right now he's gonna try to knock it away, and even though you can see the sword flying through the air, I still have it equipped and it still has power crouch dead damage stored, as the camera points to nothing. So it's just gonna be a matter of good crouch stabs and jump slashes. If his tail is low, I'll crouch stab, and if his tail is high, I'll jump slash. So yeah, like I said, this phase is supposed to take 10 hits, but the Master Sword is pretty strong, so it's already over. I can't actually continue this fight before picking up that Master Sword off the ground, even though I already have one. It's kind of weird how that works. Almost done. Final slash coming up soon. Boom. Done. That concludes Ocarina of Time No Wrong Warp in 43:21. Now, I bet you're looking at that time like, whoa, 4321, that's pretty neat. You don't even know. Like, for some reason that I don't totally understand, No Wrong Warp records have a history of being times like this. Like, back in 2014, Droma got a 48.84, which is pretty insane. In 2015, Brad got a 46.23, which is significant because 46 is exactly 23 times 2. Ixwalzo once waited for the final slash to get 47.47, and Real Time Attack 64 has a 4404, which is pretty nice. So yeah, 4321 is a pretty nice addition to that. Now, I bet a lot of you are asking yourselves whether or not this is the world record, and the answer is kind of convoluted. Remember how I said that every version officially released by Nintendo is equally legitimate for speedrunning? Well, the leaderboards also allow a platform that isn't officially released by Nintendo, which is a PC emulator called Project 64. If you read old discussions about allowing or banning emulator, it becomes pretty apparent that it should not be seen as equal to a console. And to make that clear, emulator runs have never been verified on the ZSR leaderboards, and on the speedrun.com leaderboards, it used to be that they don't even show up unless you change the filter. Emulator is, and was always meant to be, used as a stepping stone for beginners, so they could submit their 25-minute any percent time to the leaderboards, before eventually buying a Wii or an N64. But I'll get to the point. Ixwalzo has a faster time than me on emulator, and it used to be hidden behind this filter change, but literally less than 2 weeks before uploading this video, the OoT mod team changed the rules so that all emulator times within 10% of the record are not allowed on the leaderboards anymore. And also, emulator runs will be shown by default now. Ixwalzo was the only top-level RTA runner left that still used emulator, and initially I was going to ask you, the viewer, to help me peer pressure Ixwalzo into playing on console, but to my infinite fucking surprise, he finally switched to VC, so that's no longer necessary. Anyway, the point I was trying to make is 4321 is the world record, but maybe you think our rules are bullshit, and you do recognize Ixwalzo's run as the real record. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is, even though emulator is slower than VC, Ixwalzo's time is a lot faster than mine, and the main reason is that he doesn't pause buffer anything. And pause buffering really adds up over time. Like, during double game, I use 10 pauses, and during the hover, I use 10 pauses. Every pause is 2 seconds, so that's already 40 seconds right there. Also, he does a route where he skips the shield, which means he does Mido skip, and since you can't do ISGB1 skip without shield, he breaks the web all the way from the top. All in all, he estimates it saves about 15 to 20 seconds. Now, the Mido skip route was known back when I did my attempts, But anyone who knows about Mido Skip knows how much of a bitch that trick is, and the thing you gotta understand about this route is that you gotta do Gim twice. Then you better get good bomb RNG, otherwise the run dies, and at the end you got Kokiri hovers. If you add Mido Skip to that, you got a pretty good contender for the worst Ocarina of Time route of all time. Like, fuck that. Doing all that stuff unbuffered, man, I just wanted to get a 43 and then move on to another category, to be honest. Like, I've been playing No Wrong Warp since the summer of 2015. That's when I really started practicing. And in the summer of 2016, I got a 46, and I was like, alright, cool, time to move on to all dungeons. But then this route became a thing, so I had to go back to it, and I didn't want to spend too much time grinding this category that I'd already been playing for a year. So I didn't play as risky as Ixwazzle. But like, I honestly don't understand how he even finishes any runs with those strats, and I never will because he never streams. Anyway, let's talk about some strats that I could've used to save time, but didn't. Like I said, less pause buffering, Mido Skip, but also, it turns out that during Gim, when you're getting dive cancel, if you time the C up and A input properly, you can get a deep dive cycle instantly. So whenever I need to do Gim again, I'll look into that. There's also a new Gim setup now, which is a few seconds faster, but honestly, it looks really shitty. Also, there's a crouch stab west across Hyrule Field, which saves a few seconds, and it's horribly inconsistent for me. There's bridge flip, which saves a second, and I can't get it consistently. There's Po West, where you mega flip off the Po Flame, West out of that, and if you do it well, it can save like 10 seconds, but sometimes you get a big Po, and you can't do the trick, and I don't want to deal with this bullshit. Then there's this Hest through Goron City that saves a few seconds, and back when I did my attempts, I didn't realize that you can do it without ESS changes and still save time. Whoops. Real Time Attack 64 found something for Kokiri hovers. It turns out that if you hold down left or down right before you backflip, you get a bunch of extra backflip frames, which I really wish I would have known earlier. And there's also something that Brad realized a few months ago when watching an old TAS. Remember how I bought arrows in the shop? Well, what you can also do is, at nighttime, jupe a bottle over your bow slot using light arrows, and then get an arrow drop from a pot somewhere else in the run. The reason we never realized it was an option is that the old route didn't get light arrows so early on in the run, but this actually saves time, so there's that. Aside from that, I can't think of any strats I could have done faster, but it is Ocarina of Time, so I'm sure someone's gonna find something in the future. It's inevitable. If you're a casual player, and this video makes you want to try an RBA playthrough of Ocarina of Time to challenge yourself, obviously I don't recommend this specific route, but you can do the old route, which actually doesn't require that many glitches. The main difference is that you get Bottle and Kakariko, and you RBA the Broken Sword, which gives you a bunch of medallions, including the Shadow and Spirit medallion, which triggers the Light Arrow cutscene. If you want to try it, I'll link a paste bin down below with just the absolute necessities, and if anyone wants to seriously learn the run, I'll have another paste bin full of resources for both this route and the old route. Now, obviously, I wasn't the only person who contributed to this category. The run you just watched is the result of many years of glitch hunting and optimizations by the community. So first and foremost, shoutouts to Ixwazzle. When I first learned this category, I learned from his 48-47, and he has really good movement, so that was a good example to learn from. And Ixwazzle's pretty much always around in my stream, which is pretty great. Shoutouts to Brad, aka Bereaved. He plays this game on and off, so he's forever washed up, but still better than most runners. And he's currently working on a tool-assisted speedrun of No Wrong Warp, which is shaping up to be pretty amazing, because Brad's a really good tasser, so be on the lookout for that. Brad used to run No Wrong Warp, but he hasn't really played the new route yet, and honestly I can't blame him. Shoutouts to Droma Sylvia. He's a runner from France who used to play this category a lot. He was a good runner, and I remember back in 2015, I learned some stuff from his streams. You know, things like backwalk Hesses, curved backwalks. Maybe he was the first person I saw doing inverted camera, but not sure about that one. Anyway, he doesn't really run the game anymore, and he's definitely not touching the new route. He's mostly into pen spinning now, which he's been doing for a few years, and he started speedrunning Super Mario Odyssey. Shoutouts to Auto C, who used to have a lot of records in this category, but that was before I was around, so I never met him. So, those are the major top-level No Wrong Warp runners from the last few years, but of course, I also have to give huge credit to the glitch hunters that found the tricks upon which these routes are built. So first, let's talk about Gim. There's a lot of confusion about who actually found Gim, because Gim was like a big puzzle, and people kept finding stray pieces before it all came together and became useful for speedruns. The story of Gim's discovery actually starts all the way back in 2010, with this video by Glitches and Stuff. Most new glitches are discovered by clever applications of existing glitches, and this is no exception. Before this video, Clyde and Serpin, who kinda glitched as a pair, found out that if you die underwater with the out-of-bounds locked camera, then get revived by a fairy, then swim back in bounds, the camera kind of goes crazy, and if you have a text box up while the camera stops going crazy, you get walking while talking. Now what Glitches and Stuff is doing in this video isn't using a normal text box, he's using fire arrows. This unfreezes the Tektite, so then the Tektite hits Link out of the get item animation before he truly receives the item. This is the first known instance of get item delay. Later in the video, he jumps into the water and gets fire arrows. But he didn't only get fire arrows, no. He also knew that you could get a pocket egg text box that didn't actually give you the pocket egg. It's just the first and default text box in the game. If you read the description, you'll find that he was already aware that you could change the effect of the thing that happens when you jump in the water. And then, a few months later, he made this video, where he uses swimming on land to make the game think Link's diving underwater, even though he's not. Sound familiar? So yeah, Glitches and Stuff got pretty close, but no one found anything beyond that until a few years later, when Glitches and Stuff, J-Bop, and Natalia Has Died were talking about how there's probably a bunch of glitches from old times that were never explored properly, so they tried to share around old videos that hadn't been viewed much. Then, someone found the get item value in a memory viewer. Unfortunately, no one remembers who that was, but this value was pretty interesting because it changed to 0 when going in front of grabbable objects, and it changed to 126 when standing next to a fish. They knew that this value changed the effect of what jumping in the water did, basically whether it crashed or not. But they didn't find anything beyond that until they got MZX Rules involved. And MZX Rules knew full well that this value was used for chests because, at the time, he was already looking into manipulating the ass chest in Gerudo Valley. And yeah, there's an ass chest in this game. But the point is, the idea of using chests for GIM came from MZX Rules. So Glitches and Stuff tried it out by starting a new file and using the Kokiri sword chest for GIM. But unfortunately, this chest gives you the Kokiri tunic, which is one of the few items you actually have when you start a fresh file. So he just figured something was wrong or it just didn't work. Then they told Skater, he tried it in Zora's Domain, and it actually worked. Then about 3 people at once, probably Glitches and Stuff, Exodus, and somebody, realized you can use crawl spaces for get item delay. So then Glitches and Stuff tried it on 3DS, and it gave him the Megaton Hammer. So the first game on console was then on 3DS of all things. So then this crawl space method was being used in any percent from that point on, but since you were looking for a Deku Nut drop from either of these 2 enemies at 12.5% chance per enemy, no wrong didn't touch this garbage. Or well, Ixwazzle tried, but he didn't even finish one run with that route. Then, about a year later, in the summer of 2016, Skater and Bluebee found a new method that didn't involve RNG anymore, and the setup was made by the Macaron. And by the way, Exodus was messing with get item delay a few days before GIM was found, so there's that. So that's quite a complicated story, but next time someone asks you who found GIM, just answer, GIM itself was found by Glitches and Stuff, MZX Rules, probably Exodus, and Skater, and the non-RNG GIM method was found by Skater and Bluebee with a setup by the Macaron. So shoutouts to all those people, and shoutouts to Kazooie and Akrite, because Kazooie found RBA all the way back in 2006, and Akrite was the first person who really understood it. Before finding RBA, Kazooie first found BA, which I haven't even talked about in this video, but I'll cover it in the future sometime. But yeah, these guys were by far the biggest pioneers in breaking this game. Like, they were just way ahead of their time. Basically, if you think you found something new, Akrite probably already did it. Shoutouts to Nathan is Bored, who found the quick draw bottle on B method back in 2014. Before then, bottle on B was kinda tedious. You needed to do some lengthy glitch with Lon Lon Ranch, and it just wasn't very convenient. But then, quick draw bottle on B came around, and suddenly you only needed shallow water, which is everywhere. So thanks for finding that and totally breaking bingo. I also want to give some shoutouts to the people that got me into speedrunning in the first place. So shoutouts to Domas and Keon, who showed me a video of this run by Cosmo Wright, who now goes by Narcissa Wright. And this run basically got me into watching speedruns. As far as OoT went, I pretty much only watched any percent at the time. Like I watched Skater, Cosmo, Cools, Jodenstone, and eventually I picked up any percent myself, and everything kind of grew from there. Shoutouts to Splint P, who was my first real speed friend that I used to have like Skype calls with every day. That was a lot of fun. Shoutouts to Frogbird, who pretty much used to be the best streamer ever, doing streams like Super Mario Moonshine, where he got wasted on Moonshine and played Mario Sunshine, or the Tales of Hybert.
I just like took it and like, oh, it was like, like I like inhaled all the smoke and then it just like, whoa, like everything changed.
There's 21 of these. Ixwazzle started making Frogbird reaction pics like these, which eventually became FFC emotes. And FFC is basically a browser add-on that allows for custom Twitch emotes, and my stream is completely unintelligible without FFC, so you better download it. But anyway, Frogbird emotes took over, and the reason I'm even telling you this is that the No Wrong Warp scene would have been a lot less funny had Frogbird never been around. He's definitely part of the No Wrong Warp lore, so he deserves to be mentioned. Unfortunately, he left his wild ways behind and started a YouTube channel to create speedrun content, and it's called Apollo Legend, whom some of you might be familiar with. He's doing pretty good for himself now, but his original fanbase will always miss him. And when Frogbird quit, Ixwazzo started using my face for emotes and took over a bunch more streams. And that's just amazing to me. Shoutouts to Glad Jonas. He's another speedrun content creator on YouTube that some of you might know already. But what I bet you didn't know is that he was around in the Frogbird era, and not only did he make some pretty good emotes, some of the earliest videos on his channel are actually Frogbird videos. And they're classics. Shoutouts to the Nintendo of America Incorporated debugging staff. You guys did a great job. Shoutouts to Torgy, not just for being an extremely good any percent player, but also for adding subscriber emotes of my face to his channel so that now I can spam my own face anywhere on Twitch. Best subscription ever. Shoutouts to Zudu, because he's just an insane player. Just watch his Ganon record, you'll be blown away. Shoutouts to Tsundere Rar. He's a Japanese player who made this setup for Stick Escape, and this setup instantly changed this trick from being pretty annoying to fucking easy. Like, it still baffles me how good this setup is. It really made the old routes child section a lot more fun. Shoutouts to Finn Zenku for making the RBA quick guide and a really good RBA tutorial. Shoutouts to Exters for making the item drop rate chart and the OoT interactive map, both of which are really useful for making videos. Shoutouts to Danny B and to Zaz, cause I stole stuff from your guys' videos to explain trial skip. Shoutouts to Juiceler, cause he donated $15 to me after this run, but my donation alert wasn't working, so I never thanked him on stream. But yeah, thanks dude. And lastly, I want to give some shoutouts to some people that are either good runners or cool people, or both, without any further description, because we'd be here all day. So shoutouts to Realtime at X64, Alan, Valiant Link, Makami, Smash Mac, Honky, Bakeneko, Baker, Michael Radar, ZFG, Marco, Richard Sage, Pretentious Niggy, Fig, Rezi, Retro, CG, Apasher, Aaron, X will mark the place, and last but not least, shoutouts to DF, because DF made it into Ocarina of Time's RAM, which, that's pretty impressive. I don't know how he did that. So anyway, since you just watched an entire speedrun post-commentary, there's a pretty good chance that you like speedrun commentaries, so I left a few of my favorite OoT commentaries in the description, as well as a few commentaries that I liked from other Zelda games. And if you want to give speedrunners the signal that you like post-commentaries and you want more of them, just watch the existing ones and they'll get it. Alternatively, if you want to watch me run this game live, I stream my attempts on twitch.tv/Jelser64. And who knows, I might be live right now as we speak. In which case, go watch me, motherfucker. But anyway, I'll be playing All Dungeons, which is a really fun category, and it's a lot easier to follow than No Wrong Warp. Like, No Wrong Warp really needed this commentary, whereas in All Dungeons, it's not too hard to understand what's going on most of the time. So yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess. I hope you enjoyed. This commentary took me forever to make. Like, I've been sitting on this run since 2016, for fuck's sake. But it's finally done. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later.